Welcome to Magalia Rose Studio. This video is intended to be first an introduction to mineral paper itself, and it's also known as stone paper, and it'll be followed by a demonstration painting of iris flowers using watercolor and isopropyl alcohol in a spray bottle on the mineral paper. Mineral paper is a versatile surface which accepts many media, but since watercolor is my favorite medium, I mostly use mineral paper with watercolors, but I do mix it up a bit, sometimes adding and integrating ink, watercolor pencils, graphite pencils, colored pencils, and isopropyl alcohol. Here are a few sample close-ups of the images shown here for you to get a better idea of the textures you can obtain. If you're asking yourself exactly what is mineral paper, I can tell you it's a synthetic paper made from 80% limestone powder, which is a calcium carbonate mostly obtained by grinding to a powder waste pieces of quarried marble. It's reasonably environmentally friendly, and the production of mineral paper requires no water, no acid, and no bleach or optical brighteners. Along with a 9x12 piece of mineral paper, the supplies I'll be using are, the colors would be quinacridone and gold, quinacridone and burnt orange, new gamboge, alizarin crimson, cobalt blue, ultramarine blue, Davies gray, Daniel Smith sap green, and Blick sap green. I always use a little dropper to moisten each, individual color, and only moisten the colors you're going to use, otherwise it dries them out unnecessarily. To transfer the template, I have a number 2 mechanical pencil, and then I will later on darken that with the black Micron .005 marker. The only brush used is a number 8 round, a fine spray bottle of alcohol, isopropyl alcohol, either the 70 or 91%, and 2 containers of clear water, one to clean your brush and one to mix your colors. Always have a towel or paper towels handy also. And with those, we're going to go ahead and get started with our painting. I have just finished tracing the template over here onto a piece of 9x12 mineral paper, and I have traced it here first with just a number 2 graphite pencil. I'm now going to be going over that with a .005 black Micron pen. It's waterproof, very fine, but the reason I do this is twofold. One is that I can go through and make any changes that I want to do in this template, and leaving the pencil marks is no problem. The washes usually will cover those up, and at the worst case scenario, they'll simply add to the more freedom of the piece. I don't want you to be micromanaging this. I want you to relax a little bit and just pretty much get the job done. So I'm going to go ahead and start, and I'm going to then complete this, and it will all be marked with that nice dark pen mark. Here's one of the blossoms that I have remarked with the Micron pen, and you may be able to see some of the pencil marks that are still there that I didn't follow. I followed just the course of the petal as I saw it. Remember, iris flowers and blossoms are very frilly. They have lots of shadows, and trust me, your washes are going to probably cover up everything you think now. It might be a mistake, may turn out to be something that's quite different. I'm ready to begin painting. The things you should have everything ready are a spray bottle of isopropyl alcohol, 70 or 91%. I prefer the 91%. 2 containers of clear water, nice clean water, one to rinse your brush in and one to mix your colors. A towel, either a cloth towel or a paper towel to absorb water when you don't want it. I'm going to activate the colors I'm going to use on this upper blossom. I'm going to be using ultramarine blue and alizarin crimson, and I'm just going to go ahead and put a little bit of moisture on each of those. You can use a brush or a small dropper. Now I'm going to go ahead and put some ultramarine blue on this upper petal. You will notice that the mineral paper kind of resists your watercolor. Just push it around. Shouldn't be any problems there, not at all. I'm going to rinse my brush, and now I'm going to get a little bit of that alizarin crimson. By the way, ultramarine blue and alizarin crimson make a fantastic purple. And I'm just going to drop that. Don't go brushing, just gently poke in a few drops here and there, okay? Doesn't need a lot of strength here. Now comes the interesting part. I'm going to spray my alcohol on this. I can wait a little bit. It just needs to have wetness, but don't let it dry. Nothing will happen if you let it dry. I'm now going to take the alcohol and I'm going to lightly spray. And you see some little white spots appear. Maybe we can bring that in a little closer. Okay. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to just push those colors around. And I mean that literally. Push them around. You're going to want to leave some of that texture there. This is going to be sort of up to you. And I'm going to rinse my brush off, and now I'm going to do a wet lift, I call this. You use a clean brush that's just been damp. You've wiped most of the moisture off, and you're going to just put it in to that paint, clean off it, and you can lift again over here. And that can pretty much do a lot of what we want. It will continue to move a little bit. The paint will continue to move. And you can even spray it again. Let's give that a try. Even lighter. There we go. Okay, again, you can wiggle, keep some of it, because it's that fun, unpredictable melding and texturing that we are looking for. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that. I'm going to go ahead and do a couple more petals, and I'm going to speed that up for you, but you can still see the process. Okay, I'm moving on to the middle blossom here. And for a change up, we're going to use some warm colors. I'm going to be using quinacridone gold, quinacridone burnt orange, and cobalt blue. Cobalt mixed with the quin burnt orange makes a really nice rich dark. As you're mixing, you notice a green tinge starting. Just back off of the blue, add a little bit more of the quin burnt orange, and it will go back to brown. I've started so that you could see where we're going to be going with these colors, and I've already, of course, activated both quin gold, quin burnt orange, and cobalt blue. So I'm going to go ahead and wet my brush, and I'm going to put on a very loose wash of the quinacridone gold. Once your wash and alcohol of a previous petal has dried, you can spray it with alcohol. You can even touch it a bit with some of the water, and it won't reactivate. This is sort of a nice way of doing things, because if I spray alcohol now, nothing's going to be affected other than the wet areas, which is sort of the key with doing these alcohol spray paintings. Make sure that you have dry areas or shield them with a hand or something if you don't want to have that effect continue. So I put in the gold, the burnt orange, and now I'm going to just put in a dot of the cobalt blue to get that rich dark color. And again, if the blue shows up as it did here, it just adds a little bit. This is time to watch the colors mix on the paper, which gives them a richer look than if you just mixed everything on your palette. This is good practice for working with standard watercolor paper because you can just drop the colors in, not scrub, just push and gently drop. So I'm going to go ahead and spray this new area with a little bit of alcohol. Okay. Let it sit for a moment, and then again I'm just going to push. You can see I'm not brushing hard. This is one of the difficult things I had when I was learning watercolors, was that I kept wanting to brush like you paint a house, and that actually is somewhat counterproductive to having nice rich colors. Okay, I'm going to do a little wet lift here. Dip my brush, rinse it off, dry it on a towel a little bit so it's damp, and I'm just going to sort of follow the path that I want for the petal. I'm going to darken in this area a little bit. It's a little fold. I'm just putting in the Quin burnt orange here. Dropping it very lightly. My brush isn't extremely full. Okay, I think I'm pretty satisfied with that. So I'm going to go ahead and continue with other petals, and I will rejoin you in a few moments. You can see now that I have completed that middle blossom, the quinacridone gold, burnt orange, and the cobalt blue. And I've added a little gamboge for that blossom, that little beard that the iris often have. I'm now going to be going on to this lower blossom, and it is going to be a combination of cobalt blue and alizarin crimson. So I have activated those two colors, and I'm going to go ahead and first come in with the cobalt blue. And just as we have done before, I'm just going to put in a loose wash, pretty much pushing the paint all around the petal. As you've probably noticed, you don't have to cover every single inch because the alcohol is going to spread things around. Clean my brush, dip in the alizarin crimson, and gently drop some of that into the base where there's the greatest shadow, and maybe a little up in this area here. Going to pick up a little bit of that moisture. And now I'm going to go ahead and get the alcohol and give that a spray. Everything else is dry, so I don't have to worry. Well, that's made some very interesting markings. I'm going to pull into these white areas. You can leave some white areas. That's up to you. And again, pushing. This is a little dark here, but I'm not going to lift. I'm just going to push it into a little bit of a pattern of that leaf. You see the leaf sort of bent. I'm going to try to follow that. I'm going to add a little bit more alcohol to this side. And notice you can use your hand or a piece of paper. And I'm pretty happy, I think, with this pattern now. I'm going to go ahead and let that stay. Okay, I'm going to do another petal, but I'm going to speed that up. Okay, you can see that I have completed that lower blossom. So now all three of our blossoms have been painted. And now I'm going to move on to those stems. I'm going to use the Dick Blick sap green, which is a more olive tone. The traditional sap green of many of the brands, including Daniel Smith, which is a brighter green. Davies gray, which is sort of a green gray. And I'm going to also activate a bit of my ultramarine blue to darken the greens. That is one of the great ways of doing that. So I'm going to begin with the brightest of the sap greens, and I'm going to come up in this area here and just do the same gentle pushing of color that I did below, just on one side. I'm going to clean off my brush, grab a little bit of that Dick Blick sap green, and come over on the other side. And here you can see the difference. I am skipping about here because I don't want these colors necessarily to mix into each other. I'm going to just gently pull in a little bit of the moisture, allowing those to blend. Now I'm going to get that Davies gray, which is very dull, but boy, it can sure add a nice tonality when used sparingly. It's going to be a little darker under the blossom because the blossom itself is going to throw some shade down there. I'm not even going to try any ultramarine blue at this point, but I am going to go ahead and, since everything is dry on the blossoms, I'm just going to go ahead and spray my alcohol onto those portions of the stem that are still wet. Going to let them dry a bit more. We're still not getting a lot of action, and that's because there is so much water in that pigment. So let's let that sit for just a bit. Okay. I'm going to push a little more of the Davies. So while I'm waiting on that, I'm going to come down here and do the same thing basically, but I'm going to skip the lighter sap. I'm just going to come right in with some darker sap, some Davies gray. Coming down to the lower stems, same process. A little bit of bright sap on one side, your sun side or light side. Grab some of the Davies. Again, don't be too precise. Enjoy the paint flowing. Okay. I'm just going to do a little bit up here. And again, this is the Davies gray. Pull that into some shade. And I'm going to let those areas dry. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and continue on with this center stem. Same process. These are dry for the most part. If there's a little dampness in there, I'm not too concerned about it. And I'm just going to gently squiggle in some of the Blick sap and now a little of the Daniel Smith sap. And just a bit of the Davies gray. I'm going to clean my brush, get rid of some extra moisture, and do a little lifting on this side there. That looks fine. And then again, I'm going to go down each of these stems. And do a little spray while they're nice and wet. Okay, looks like it's about done. I'm going to let it dry and see if we're going to do any more touching up. Well, the mineral paper experiment is complete. I have put a 11 by 14 mat around it. Before I am completely finished with it, I always use a spray fixative. This is just a sample, whether it's Yupo or mineral paper. What I hope you've taken away from this is allowing yourself a little freedom and relaxing with the movement of watercolor. I hope you have had fun mixing the colors on the paper instead of on your palette. And the fun of watching textures and accepting the sort of innovative nature of the materials. So I've really enjoyed having you with me today, and I hope you join me again for some other projects. Keep painting.